Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazao Ministries podcast.
What do we think of the films of 2024 so far? We're going to be asking that question and more today on Systematic Geekology. We are the Priest of the Geeks. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, joined, of course, by one of the best co-hosts out there, Kevin Schaefer. How's it going, Kevin?
Christian, great to be here. I'm very excited for this one. Like, anyone who knows me knows I'm a huge movie buff, so I go to theaters all the time, so very excited. And it's been an interesting year so far. I'm really interested in getting your picks as well, and this will be a lot of fun.
Yes, I am looking forward to this one. It's actually, we were talking a little beforehand, listeners and viewers, and I kind of just had that realization, I haven't really been to the movies that much this year. So we've got a select list here, about 3 each. Kevin has seen more than I have, so we'll get to that. But first, before we get there, Kevin, what have you been geeking out on recently?
So my geeking out today actually ties into this episode really well. There's a podcast called The Director's Cut, which you can get on any podcast platform, where filmmakers interview other filmmakers after their movie comes out. So like the interviews are recorded live directly after a screening, and so like there's an interview I just listened to with Wes Ball, the director of The New Planet of the Apes, and he's interviewed by Barry Jenkins, the director of Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, and he's doing the upcoming Mufasa movie. So things like that. You can find interviews with Greta Gerwig, Ryan Johnson, really, and Spielberg. I mean, it's got everyone on there. Really concise and informative discussions. If you're, like I said, a movie geek like I am, I just love anything like that. And they're very entertaining. So yeah, it's called, again, The Director's Cut. So highly recommend checking that out, adding it to your podcast library.
Excellent. Solid choice. For me, what just released not too long ago was the South Park The End of Obesity special. And I had a lot of fun with that. They got the whole Ozempic thing going on, and body positivity, and should we allow jerks to just say whatever they want to? Or what's too far? South Park very rarely misses with me, and this was most definitely a good one. Well worth the wait. I wish they would do longer seasons again, but if they got this deal with Paramount where they're making money, I can't really stop Trey and Matt from doing what they do. Are you a South Park guy at all?
I've seen it. It's been a long time. I do love Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Like, I love Book of Mormon and everything. And I think they're immensely talented. But I've never been like a hardcore. I watched it in high school and stuff. But it's one of those just legacy comedy cartoons that I understand why it has, and I always enjoy it when I do watch it. But that's what I love about this category is we can go from a filmmaking podcast to South Park. And I thought you were going to say like My Adventures with Superman. So I didn't know. Yeah.
We got to talk about that later on too, because those first 2 episodes were quite fun.
So I'm so excited.
That's for a different show though. There's that. So Kevin, I know you wanted to start it off before we actually did our list with a group of your honorable mentions. Would you like to go ahead and throw those out there for the good people?
That sounds great. So yeah, because this was, this has been an interesting year so far. Like, I mean, like I said, anyone knows me, I go to the movies like every week. And at the start of the year, there wasn't a ton coming out because we were still in the wake of the writers and actors strike. So a lot of stuff had been pushed back. So there wasn't a ton, but I have two that were like once things started to come out again, two that really struck me. And it was hard not to put in the top three, but one is The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, directed by David Leitch. And this movie is, I've seen it twice now actually, because I went right around when it came out. And then one of my best friends, I knew he would love it. So saw it again with him yesterday. And it is a love letter to stunt people, which is like a profession that has often been pushed to the side in movie history. And David Leitch,
Yes.
the director, who he did a John Wick movie, and he did Deadpool 2, I think, and then the Fast and the Furious Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. He was a stunt man for the longest time in his career, and then eventually moved to directing. And the movie is based on an old television series with Lee Majors. And the story is that Ryan Gosling plays a stuntman for Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who's this big action movie star. And wow, and the director of the movie he's working on, played by Emily Blunt, he has a huge crush on, and they have a history, and he wants to impress her. And while this movie is being made, the actor that Aaron Taylor Johnson plays goes missing, and Ryan Gosling's character has to go find him. So the movie is of course, does all these crazy stunts, and it's a love letter again to that profession. But it's also like action movie meets rom com. It's a perfect summer blockbuster. I was surprised that it hasn't done great at the box office. It started to break even, but I thought especially with the combined star power of Gosling and Blunt, and them being both two stars from the Barbenheimer phenomenon of last year, I thought it would have done better. But if you haven't, I mean, it is still playing. And it's one I highly recommend going see in theaters because it is just like that perfect summer popcorn blockbuster. And it can still be enjoyed at home, but it's going to be much better with an audience. So, so that one I highly recommend. And the other, and it's kind of crazy that I didn't have this in my top three, but that's because there are two other blockbuster sci-fi spectacles that I really, really liked. But nonetheless, Dune Part 2 is, of course, masterpiece.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, it's a surprise I didn't have my top three, but again, I'll get to why I had liked 2 just a little better. But Dune Part 2, I mean, I think with the first movie, as good as it is, it's very expository, and it kind of lays out the world and characters. This one is, covers mainly the second half of the book and gets a lot into the meat of the story. And there's amazing spectacle scenes. And have you read any of the books?
I've read the original Dune, and that's it. I have some of the other books at home, but I have not read them because my library expands every year, and I always fall behind. I never get ahead.
Same. I have Messiah, but I've also only read the original. But and it'd been I read it right before the first movie came out. So a few years ago, and I really liked with Part 2. It did make some changes from the source material that I thought were really effective. It did an interesting thing with particular Chani and her culture, and kind of like examining the religious divide there, as far as like there's this sect of her people, like Javier Bardem's character, who are very much gung-ho believing that Paul is the Messiah, and then this other half that is like more skeptical. And and so I really liked that addition, and just the whole portrayal there. And also that sorry, this is a little spoiler, but that Chani has ambivalence toward the arranged marriage at the end between Paul and Princess Arula. In the book, she just like is very complacent with it. And I thought that was an interesting angle, because that look of her in the final shot of the movie, it's not even like anger or jealousy, I don't think, toward Arula, as much as it is lament that Paul is going down the path that she feared he would, and is going to become this like destroyer of worlds. I thought that was a brilliant way to end the movie.
Yeah, that was a nice change. Yeah, because I remember reading the book forever ago and being like, "Well, he's just in a marriage with this woman now. What the heck happened?" And being
Right.
unsatisfied as a kid,
Right.
and then go, "Oh wait, no, okay, I get it now." From like the political scheming, this makes sense for him to make this maneuver. It's not the most moral decision in the world,
Yes.
but it makes sense for the world he's living in. Yeah. So yeah, Dune was a fine film. Yeah, I originally didn't include it in my list because you had it in yours, and I was trying to do ones you didn't. But then you decided not to do that, so it's fine. We can discuss it right now. Love the film, great film, and the films I have here aren't exactly my top three, but they're just the ones I wanted to talk about more.
Oh, and you have some interesting ones, and I think we've got some good ones to talk about. So I'm excited here. But
Yeah. Do you have any
Dune
more honorable
is
mentions?
of course. I would also add Challengers to the list. The one with
Okay.
Zendaya. So two Zendaya movies here on the list.
Yes.
She's on top of the world right now. But that's the tennis movie. And it was funny because I have a good friend from college who is obsessed with tennis, and I texted him after I got out. I was like, "Hey, I did something tennis related today." But like, because while I really don't have any interest in sports, I see a decent number of sports movies. Either with my dad or, and this is a very different kind because it's not the typical kind of like inspirational one. This is about a really toxic love triangle and also toxic friendship, and it plays out over the course of like 15 years. It jumps back and forth between when these three people are starting out in their careers and then when they're adults. And she has romantic entanglements with both the guys, and then they all have conflicts with each other. But it's really well done, telling a non chronological story. The cinematography and the acting are fantastic. That's one like I I don't know that I would have sought out had I not heard like buzz and the star appeal. Zendaya is great, and I also Mike Feist is one of my favorite up and coming actors. He's not been in a ton, but I loved him in the West Side Story remake that Spielberg did. And he would also be my pick for if the MCU ever does Harry Osborn. I think he would be
Ooh.
perfect for that.
Okay.
And there's also a fun little Spider-Man reference at the beginning of the movie, just because Zendaya's in it, so that was fun. But that is also excellent movie. It's hard to like really root for any of the characters, but that was kind of the point.
Yes.
And yeah, really well done.
Okay. Well, those were our honorable mentions. Other than Dune, I can't really think of anything else. So I'll agree with you there. So before we go any further into the show, we are going to be spoiling the heck out of these movies.
Yes.
So if you hear a movie title and you have not seen it, this is your warning here and now to skip ahead a couple of minutes so you don't hear what you don't want to hear. Now, me, on the other hand, I don't care about spoilers. They just really heighten it for me. But I know other people are a little more squeamish in the same way that for reasons I'll never understand, there's a website called Does the Dog Die? And the people are just a little too sentimental in that area. And I know people love their pets and all this, but not like I'm out there and saying, yes, the dog just died in the film. But like, it doesn't affect me as much as other people. So let me love you in this way. Avoid the spoilers if you hear a film.
And I will say that with my top three, like one of them is available on streaming. The other two are in theaters, and you should definitely see them in theaters and seek out the other. So yeah, so you can just if you want to just look at the titles here and then come back and listen to this. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go with our first pick. Kevin will be going first. This was his brainchild. He deserves to go first. A film he has seen twice already, even though it just came out. Furiosa. Kevin, lay it on me. I have not seen the movie, but I am very interested. I love Fury Road.
Okay, so you love Fury. Have you seen the original Mad Max trilogy too?
I have seen, yes. Everything
Awesome.
Mad Max has done except for this.
So if you like Mad Max, I think you'll love this movie. But I also got to show off here. So I went the first time I saw it, went to the Alamo Drafthouse, which is my favorite theater, and they were you could buy Furiosa pint glasses. So I have this right here. It's got I don't know if you can quite see it in the frame here, but
Time out. There are Alamos in North Carolina now.
Oh yeah, in Raleigh. I've been going. I mean, it opened in 2018. I've been going religiously ever since. So that was my introduction to Alamo, and I'm going to be in Austin, Texas next week for a conference, so I want to check out the original while I'm there. But oh yeah, Alamo is like the main theater I go to. So if you're ever when you come into the Triangle, come with me. We will go. Yeah.
Okay. Now we've got to do that at some point because all I have ever heard is like they're the best way to watch a movie.
It really is. I mean, I cannot sell the experience enough. The food, the service, the atmosphere. This has become a commercial for Alamo, but I don't regret that at all. And you get pint glasses like this. You get merchandise. So, but
Okay.
okay.
So sorry for interrupting, but go ahead.
No worries. No worries. So Furiosa, yes, I've already seen it twice. Even though we're not really doing an order for these for this episode, I will go ahead and say this is 100% my favorite movie of the year, and it's going to be really hard to top. So yes, I love Fury Road. I rewatched the original trilogy the last weekend before this came out, and I don't know, I'm still like Fury Road is just iconic, and it's like one of the best action movies ever made. But I'm kind of leaning toward this might be my favorite Mad Max movie yet, and
Okay.
I think, which I know is a bold statement, and that may change. I don't know because like I mean this and Fury Road are just so good. But what I like about this one even more is that it's the first Mad Max movie that does an episodic storytelling narrative, where this is the origin, obviously, of Imperator Furiosa, who became a huge a new addition to the franchise with Fury Road, and Charlize Theron gave an amazing performance. And even though with like the minimal amount of dialogue, just her presence and the nature of the character, it was just like this an instant fan favorite. And so while it's a bit atypical for a director to introduce a character like that, and instead of doing a sequel, go back and do a prequel immediately. But this is what like I think it works so well because when you watch this movie, it adds so much depth and to her character that makes the viewing of Fury Road all the better. So you get, and what I was really surprised about this is that so obviously Anya Taylor-Joy plays the younger Furiosa, and the movie opens with a 10-year-old version of the character. And when it started, I thought, okay, this will probably be like a scene or two with the younger version of her. She's acted the younger version. I forget the actor's name off the top of my head, but she's fantastic too. She's in it for like the first hour, and this is a 2.5 hour movie. So Anya Taylor-Joy doesn't come in till about an hour in, maybe slightly less, but still, it's a while. And the transition there is seamless too. But that's what I liked about that is that again, it's a different kind of pacing for a Mad Max movie, especially where Fury Road takes place over, I think, 36 hours and is just relentlessly paced. And it's just, these one amazing, emotionally intense action scene after another. Yeah. Furiosa certainly has that. And the action here is building on what came before even more so. And George Miller, once again, proves just how much of a genius he is when it comes to blockbuster filmmaking. But this story plays out over the course of, I think, about 15 to 20 years. So you really get the full story of Furiosa's life from the time she's a child and undergoes a horrendous tragedy at the hands of Chris Hemsworth villain, which another standout here, Chris Hemsworth gets to play a truly despicable villain, and he totally sinks his teeth into the role here. I mean, you of course know him as Thor, and you know him as like this charismatic guy, but he gets to play just like an arguably even more despicable villain than Immortan Joe, who is awful as well. But and he also, of course, being Australian, he gets to utilize his natural accent here. But he brought so much to this character. I loved every minute he was on screen, no matter how sadistic his character was. And also, he plays out as a rival to Immortan Joe, because they bring like that was the other thing. Like you see Immortan Joe in the second trailer, so I knew he was going to be in it, but I didn't know how much. He plays a significant role in this as well. He was recast because unfortunately Hugh Keays-Byrne, who originated the role and was also in the original Mad Max as Toe Cutter, he passed away in 2020. So they had and they actually had the guy who plays him here also plays one of Chris Hemsworth's character, who's named Dr. What was it? Dr. Dementis. He plays one of his gang members, and he plays Immortan Joe. So that was cool. This is just, it's such a, like, it's so hard to make a really compelling prequel like this especially because, I mean, a spoiler here is that this movie ends literally like in the build up to the scene in Fury Road, the beginning there, and even in the post credits, it shows clips of Fury Road. So it starts when Furious is 10 years old, and then it builds up to the very beginning of Fury Road. So it's really hard to make a compelling prequel where you know where exactly the story is headed. But this is a perfect example of when you make a prequel good, it's about the journey of getting there. Because like for me, I don't know about your take on this. Like obviously, I'm a Star Wars prequels fan, and like I never really minded like the concept because there's even a Patton Oswalt joke about like I don't need to know where what I like came from. I just want to get through the cool stuff, so there are a lot of people that like that have this kind of ambivalence for prequels because they're like, why? You already know where it's going. But for me, it's about the journey of getting there, and I find the how it happened just as fascinating as the destination. And this is a perfect example of that. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like,
Yeah.
or like, yeah?
I mean, for me, even as a kid at 9 years old when Phantom Menace came out, like I knew the end goal was Anakin is going to end up as Darth Vader.
Right.
So, like, that's fascinating. How does Anakin Skywalker, this young kid, so full of hope and optimism, end up becoming, the number 2 to the Sith Lord who controls the entire galaxy? What is the bridge there? How do I reach that characterization? And mostly, I'm fine with what happens. I have plenty of gripes with the prequels. I have many gripes with the sequels, so that's a different conversation. We've already had that one. But with the prequels, it's like, George, you need an editor. Please, for the love of God, listen to someone else besides yourself. You have these amazing ideas. You have beautiful scenes on screen, but the characterization could have used a lot of work. So it sounds in Furiosa's case, this is not that. This is, and in fact, I was blown away when you said we spent an hour with her at 10 years old, because I saw that part in the trailers. Be like, oh, well, yeah, I thought like you maybe, a scene or maybe like the first part of the movie, but for it to go an hour long, wow, that must be a really compelling story to have to tell at that age. Because I'm expecting like Furiosa within the ranks of whichever warlord she's at is where we'd spend the bulk of the film, but it doesn't sound like that. That's weird, but it sounds cool.
There is like a good amount of that, but yeah, it really takes its time in a good way, building that characterization, showing how she gets, and showing her rise to eventually becoming, the Imperator in Morton Joad's army at the Citadel. And yeah, I mean, that is exactly right. Like the script is just so well written in that it doesn't rely on a ton of dialogue, but you feel the emotional intensity of her journey throughout and why she's so desperate to get revenge on Dementis and why she wants to come into her own space. And of course, in Fury Road, she's trying to get back to the Greenland where she originated from. Unfortunately, how that story ends, that like it is eventually destroyed. And like that makes this even more heartbreaking because like that, but that's eventually going to be years old. But you see the pain and the anguish she goes through after being separated from her people and getting captured as a kid, and wanting to find her home once again. There's a lot of biblical allegories in that too. I mean, the journey there. There's several. There's actually an Adam and Eve and an apple imagery at the beginning and end of this film that I think will be discussed for a long time. That I don't want to spoil because I'll just say that the ending here, when you put it together, it's one of the most brutal revenge series I've ever seen. And that's saying something because I've seen a lot. Yeah. But I'll just I don't want to spoil for people. But yeah, and then what I said about episodic storytelling, so it's broken into 5 chapters. Like the first one is called The Pole of Inaccessibility. It has really ominous titles like that. There's another one called Stowaway, and then the last one is called Beyond Vengeance. And so that's again the first Mad Max movie to do that kind of structure. Again, Fury Road is just so relentless and just like moves at such a pace. This one tells this sweeping narrative, and that's why I think the title works so well. Furiosa, Mad Max Saga. This really is. You feel like this just like amazing epic play out, and you really get a feel for her character, and yes, you get the reason of how she loses her arm, all these things, and it's just. I just cannot say enough good things about it, and it's crushing me that it's not doing great at the box office right now. I know it's just opening weekend, but it's sadly really underperforming right now. I really hope that changes because
Yeah.
this is a movie I cannot emphasize enough demands to be on seen on the big screen. You just cannot get the same experience watching it at home. So if you can get to a theater, please go see it.
Do you love systematic ecology as much as I do? Of course you do. So why don't you hop on over to the Systematic Ecology shop and get yourself some merch. We have clothing like hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies. We even have glassware and mugs. One of my favorite coffee mugs that I use every morning is a coffee mug that has on it, share the faith, share the geek. Yeah, I get my geek on first thing every morning, thinking of systematic ecology. And I know you need to hop over there and get you some merch, represent us out in the wild, out in the public, and let people know that you too like to share the faith and share the geek.
Yeah, I will at some point see this. It's one of those things. The Mad Max universe is just fun to play in.
Yeah.
Because when you actually put some critical thinking to it, you say, there's no way he should be that age in Fury Road and all this. But
Right.
I always kind of like the idea, the fan theory of he's more like the personification of
Right.
resistance in the wasteland. So he only really shows up when he's needed, and he doesn't really exist outside of that. I know that breaks all metaphysics of the universe. There's really no supernatural events really happening in them, but it's just fun to think that instead of like somehow he's that old. Or there's also the other tales of like it's just people's stories about him, and that's why there's contradictory information in them, because he was here but he was also there. He was this size. He was actually looked like Tom Hardy. He looked like Mel Gibson, you know, all over the place. So yeah, and he's not the deepest character in the world, and
No,
that's
but
okay.
that's okay.
But to build a franchise off of him is like your start to get to somewhere like Furiosa and explore her story, who is a far deeper character, even in just Fury Road alone. I can appreciate when filmmakers go that route to build up the world that they're in already. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Absolutely. And also just say one more note that there's a lot of franchises out there where I like seeing different voices come into play, different directors kind of give their own spin on things. Mad Max is one. Honestly, I just cannot see anyone else but George Miller playing in this universe. Yeah, it's just like when he passes, hopefully not anytime soon. I mean, I'm sure they'll want to make more in the future. And I mean, I may be wrong. There may be like some who can do really well, but no one is going to have the same voice that he has, and that the same level of just mastery when it comes to delivering amazing action sequences and world building. So I almost, we've gotten 5 so far, and he's expressed interest in making more. But yeah, I kind of only want his voice in this universe. But that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, before we transition, I would like to say, guys, if you haven't played the Mad Max video game based off of Fury Road, you are missing out. I was completely blown away with how good it was. I was expecting to be like, that tie-in movie game where they just said, well, a movie's coming out, we'll do that too. No, this is an in-depth game. Actually gives him some interesting characterization, and the driving thing, parts of the game are really fun. And I say that as someone who hates driving in video games, because normally I just crash. Well, crashing's part of the game. So there's that. Do you have anything else for Furiosa before we move on?
Just go see it. Go, you will not regret it.
Perfect. Next up, we have Abigail. Were you able to see this, Kevin?
I've not yet, and I want to, but this looks like a ton of fun, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. And feel free to spoil. I don't mind.
Yeah. This is one of those ones where the trailer kind of spoils everything. So I'd say going to this one, if you're of that mind, just go into it. But still, at the end of the day, as someone who doesn't care about spoilers, it works. Even knowing what happens, we have our whole setup here where a group of master thieves and kidnappers have been assembled as a team to take down this girl who's looks like 12 or 13ish, and knock her out and steal her away from her parents so that they can get paid for kidnapping her. And after that, they just are supposed to leave. Well, it turns out they've been conned this whole time. One of our first twists of the film is they end up in this mansion that they don't really know. It's kind of been to say, hey, this is where you're supposed to drop her off and stay until contacted, and then we'll pay you. Well, it's really because she is the one behind the kidnapping, the little girl, and she is a vampire who's hundreds of years old and has taken on different identities at different points in time, has never aged, and very much in the same way that Kirsten Dunst's character in Interview with a Vampire, just stuck at the age when you were turned, which has got to be one of the most frustrating things in the world for a character to endure. But this is all part of a scheme. They have all at one point done her father wrong. Her father is in her sire, the person who made her into a vampire, and she's trying to get back into his good graces by taking them out one by one. And it goes through the film of, I would never remember character names that they said them, like I could look it up right now, but they are who they are. And you have, competent person at sniping, you have competent person at getting people to work together, blah blah blah. And it's like seeing them picked off one by one as we learn more about the vampire lore, which this movie does a really great job of establishing. Because hey, she can be taken out by this specific group of chemicals that can knock her out. That's how they get her in the first place. She wasn't faking. Like, that actually legitimately knocks her out. Why does that work? They kind of explore that a little bit. They go into the moment when they find out, hey, there's a vampire among us. There's that initial doubt that's in their minds, but then they kind of all have a scene. It's like, all right, there was a vampire there. What do we know about vampires? And we have a good scene of being like, well, they're weak to crosses and steaks and garlic and sunlight. And then they kind of like test those hypotheses out and see what works and what doesn't. And that makes for a really fun film because like your character's going like, well, this is what the popular culture says, but what actually is going to get us out of here alive? Because they find that the entire mansion has been put under lockdown. All the windows there's bars outside, cages preventing them from leaving. So they are stuck in there for the entire night trying to get away from her. And it gets in this whole thing of like, what does it mean to have this long life and still have people above you who control your actions, who you're trying to look up to and be like? And as well, like characters who are dealing with loss, trying to reconnect with family, but they're also in these really skeevy forms of employment so that they can have the money to be back with their family, or people who just are just sadists for the sake of being sadists, people who are scheming to become the new number one. There's a lot of intrigue in here. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but my eyes were glued on the screen. And that very rarely happens because of my undiagnosed whatever. That makes me just not pay attention to things as well as I should. I'm going to keep saying to undiagnosed whatever because I still don't have the money to figure out what's wrong with me. So there's that. It's a bloody film. So if you're one of those people, you're a little squeamish about that, I would suggest you go elsewhere for your entertainment. Trying to think. I don't remember there being any nudity. If there is, I completely forgot about it. There's just swearing, ultra violence. So if those things that you're not into, just depart in peace. Go watch something else. Kevin, your thoughts so far?
Did you see Renfield last year with Nick Cage
Yes.
and Nicholas Hoult? That's just what, like, when I saw this trailer, I mean, still different, but that kind of like genre mashup and horror and like, very bloody and but Renfield also not perfect, but I did enjoy it a lot, and that's, I don't know, like this kind of another like vampire that's like, it's action comedy and horror, but that one was a lot of fun. So I definitely am going to check this one out.
Yes, there's some really interesting moments of like, okay, she's a vampire. So what does that mean about her morality? Is there any way that, is she just completely unable to do good again? Is she unable to reconnect with humanity in any way, stretch, or form? Can she ally with humans for anything? Why would humans seek vampirism? It's a pretty good questions asked. Not all of them fulfilling, but they're asked well enough. And yeah, if someone said, hey, we're going to watch Abigail again, I'm going to throw Abigail on the screen.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it's definitely on my list. I'm looking forward to checking it out soon.
Yep. All right, next up, we have Kevin's next pick, Late Night with the Devil. So this is a Shudder original. I knew nothing about. So Kevin, lay it on me. What is this sucker about?
Oh man, this is a good one. So continuing on a horror streak right here. So first off, David Dastmalchian is the lead in this. That's what got me to see this even more. Like, I don't know if you know him. He's one of my favorite modern actors. He played Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad. He's in the first Dune. He is known for playing these very quirky side characters. And then I was so glad with this one that they gave him the lead role in this. So this is set in 1977. David Dastmalchian plays a very Johnny Carson-esque late night talk show host. And the entire movie, aside from the prologue that introduces him and his story, it plays out in real time as an episode of his late night show on Halloween, and so it's a horror themed episode. But and it starts off like he has a guy doing kind of supernatural magic tricks and stuff. Then he has a skeptic on, and as the episode progresses, and as the movie progresses, really dark things start to happen, and it's like we learn that like, oh, there's actual demonic forces at work here, and this builds up to he brings on a like a paranormal investigator who wrote this book, and a girl that she supposedly did an exorcism on, and that leads to some of the most frightening and really gruesome images in the movie. And so there's so many things I loved about this. Like I mean, I love David Zaslavich's performance as well as everyone else in the cast. There's no really, he's the only kind of like recognizable actor, at least for me, in the cast. But everyone did a phenomenal job. It captures the aesthetic of late night TV in that era so well. You genuinely feel like you're watching a live recording of a late night episode, and that's really hard to do, and that makes it all the more immersive. I was just reading a review before this saying that wow, I get this chance to see this in theaters before it went to Shudder. And I still, if you ever get a chance, if they re-release it, do recommend that. But this is one also that benefits, oddly enough, from watching it on TV because it is revolved around that atmosphere, and it like plays on the comfort of late night television and subverts it really well. The directors and writers are Cameron and Colin Carnes, I think. They're brother filmmakers. And I don't know what else they've done. But yeah, this is, and for those of you who don't know what Shudder is a horror streaming service. So they have some really interesting stuff on there. And I was glad to see that they did get a theatrical release for this one first. That shows that they're getting kind of budgets and stuff. But this was just easily one of the best horror films I've seen in a while. It never lets you go. It's just great imagery, great, like, not even like just like jump scares, but it just like scares you with the atmosphere and what's happening. And the only spoiler I give is like the reason some of the supernatural stuff is happening is because so David Desmond play, like, his character is a successful enough late night show host, but he's always like one step behind, and he's also had some tragedies happen in his life, and he's desperate to boost his ratings so he can ensure a career future, because it's been on the line several times. So it's revealed that he has made kind of a deal with a supernatural force in the past, and he kind of thought nothing of it in the past. He was like on this trip with friends and got sucked into this like cultish type thing, but he had kind of forgotten about it, and now it comes to bite him in the back. So like, because he gets a career boost again, and this is like the highest rated episode, and then everything goes haywire. So it just like plays on that really well. Again, I can't say enough good things about this one. It's one of the like, I like, with horror, I like a mix of, I love campy stuff, I love kind of the classics, and then I love really psychological stuff like this that is kind of like that quote unquote elevated horror, where it is really trying to appeal to people who are not like both fans of the genre, and also this is the review I read was in New York Times, and they praised it, and like that when you can get like genre stuff like that get respected by critics, that's huge, and this absolutely deserves all the admiration. So highly recommend this one. Like I said, it is on Shudder. You can rent it on Amazon too if you don't have Shudder. But it's just, and I was just so happy for David S. Maltson again, because he's also a comic book writer too. He has a indie series through Dark Horse that James Gunn helped promote while they were making Suicide Squad. And again, having played all these like quirky side characters who I really love, and you've seen his face for a while. Even in Dark Knight, like the scene where it's like the fake Joker, kind of like who like a shotgun. He's that guy, like the one that they
okay.
That's him. Yeah. So
yes,
he's been around for a long time, but mostly kind of on the sidelines. And then and Polka Dot Man is one of the characters in Suicide Squad. So I loved him in that. but I just love seeing him in this role. A very different role for him, and he does a phenomenal job. It's a great performance. He's so charismatic. He really captures that Johnny Carson persona really well. And yeah, cannot say enough good things on this one. So definitely go see it.
Yeah, keeping within horror and vampires, he was also in Last Voyage of the Demeter. I just looked that up.
Yeah.
A fun, very fun film based off of a single chapter. I think a single chapter of the original Dracula.
Right.
Well, done extremely well.
Yeah.
So this is a found footage movie?
It's done in that style. But it also it does have scenes in the where they go backstage, like in between takes and stuff. So it cuts between that. But
so it's a hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I am a complete and utter sucker for found footage films, no matter how terrible they are.
There's so many that it is something about the style.
Yeah. There are really good ones out there too. I love Grave Encounters. I love the VHS series. Most of what they do. I love the original Paranormal Activity and all that. And then you get a lot of stinkers out there that you're like, why did I just waste 2 hours watching that? And then I watch the next one. Why did I do that again? What is wrong with me? So what isekai is to anime, a found footage is for me in horror.
That's fair.
I will watch all the trash just so I can get to the gems. And this sounds like a genuine gem.
Very much so.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's really hard to capture that feel of that era so well, both with the lighting, the cinematography, just the atmosphere, and making you feel like I said, you literally are right there in a 1970s talk late night show. That's hard to do, and it does it extremely well here. And it's again a gripping narrative. I'm sure if I watch again, I'd probably find some plot holes or whatever, but there was never a moment where I lost interest. It just kept my attention the entire time. Was really gripping, and it's got and then as far as definitely this is a hard R movie. It's got the violence toward the end is pretty gruesome. It has some really unsettling images. But if you like horror, I think you'll have a great time.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Anything else to say on Late Night with the Devil before we move on?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it being an annual Halloween watch for me.
Okay, good. All right, so next topic. We have Godzilla and Kong, The New Empire. If you remember, listeners and viewers, we did an episode not terribly long ago on Godzilla -1. This is not Godzilla -1 in any way, shape, or form. It is your dumb summer blockbuster, not even before that, really, when it was released, flick with kaiju just beating the heck out of each other. Why? There's an actual, story, but do you care about the story in these? No. This is not, having Koichi overcome his trauma of having once been someone submitted to be a suicide bomber and then trying to raise a family in post-war Japan. No, this is after the events of the other parts of the Monarch verse here. We're seeing King Kong fighting other giant apes. We're seeing Godzilla tussle with King Kong again. Mothra being the voice of reason in the room once more, just so we can see some giant kaiju action. That not to say this has no substance or anything. There's a reason I come back to these. Outside of just seeing giant monkey hitting giant lizard in the face. There's some character development here. We have some exploration of what it means to be born in one culture, adopted into another, and then to find another bit of that culture is still around. How do you relate to that? Do you stay where you've been adopted in? Do you go back into that culture even though it's a little different than the one you grew up in? Especially being someone I cannot remember her name for the life of me, who is also deaf and has to sign for people to understand her. That's a really good fun part of the movie. We get some, for the Monarch verse, some interesting side human characters. We've got is it Dr. Madison? Is that her name? I'd have to look it up again. But she's fine. We get the guy who shows up in the film, making it look like he's been there the whole time, but he's actually appearing in this film first, and the way they interact with him. Tracker, something like that. And that's fine. We get the human characters doing their thing, but what we're really here for is the monster fights. And we have Kong going through some development of his own. Like, yeah, now he's king of the Hollow Earth. But what does that mean if he has really no subjects who can understand him, who can interact with him? He's the last of his kind. But now we found out in the hollower Earth of the Hollow Earth, there are more giant apes around who are his same species. But they are led by an evil member of their group known as the Scar King, who is an effective enough villain for this movie. Not the deepest character in the Godzilla franchise, but he does his part. And having, of course, Godzilla be like the main, essentially god of this pantheon of higher beings, just keeping the other kaiju in line, killing those who need to be killed, killing the ones he needs to kill so he can charge up for the fight at the end. Man, this movie's not a 10 out of 10, but I'm giving it like a 9 out of 10 for just the enjoyment factor alone. What do you think, Kevin?
I haven't seen this one yet. I've seen like all the others in this universe, but I was listening to a YouTube review and he was like, it's the best and worst thing for this movie that it came out a few months after Godzilla Minus One, because Godzilla Minus One like is cinema and it like got a bunch of people excited for monsters. But like you said, if you're going into like these ones expecting anything like that, you're going to be severely disappointed. But I probably will check this one out eventually. I wasn't like rushing to see it, but I have seen the others. I think I said it on the Godzilla Minus One I might have mentioned that out of the ones in these universe, the only one I really enjoyed was Kong Skull Island. Part of that is I'm like more a King Kong fan, and I thought that one did a good job balancing B movie action with human characters I actually cared about enough, and they were interesting, and it did have some star power like to help there. Not that the others didn't, but that one had a good cast of like Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson and Samuel Jackson. But I didn't really care for either of the standalone Godzilla movies. They were just eh. And then Godzilla versus Kong, the first one and this one, I saw like that came out at just the right time because it was still during COVID, but it was like right when the vaccines came out, and I was rushing to theaters as soon as I got vaccinated. Even though they were like, theaters were at half capacity and we were all masked and everything. But I needed a good dumb seeing Godzilla and Kong fight each other after the horrors of the last couple of years. So that was really, that's what this one, you go to for kind of the same reason. So I will see it at some point. And also I'm looking at the credits right there on the poster that the music, one of the composers is Tom Hulkenberg. He also did the soundtrack for the composition for Furiosa. So one of my so that alone is compels me to go see it at some point. But it's like, did you also watch that? I haven't watched it yet, but that Apple series that also apparently ties into this universe.
Legacy of Monsters, I think it is. Monarch.
That's how it's called. Yeah. Monarch. Yeah.
I watched it. I started liking it, then lost me halfway through with the characters they chose to follow. And then it just became like a bunch of whiny millennial Gen Z, whatever the heck the age they would have been right now in their 20s. And then there was still some compelling stuff. And when it focused on the characters in the past, I'm there for it. When it focused on the characters in our present, I couldn't care less about their exploits. So that's my review.
Okay, cool. That's it. Like I had heard some good things about it, and I thought it was cool that like Kurt Russell and Wyatt Russell are both in it. But
they're phenomenal in their roles. I'll give them that.
Okay, cool, nice.
And I will say I am looking forward to season 2 whenever that does air.
Okay,
I haven't given up on it.
Yeah. Where would you with this movie? Where would you rank it as far as like the others in this universe?
Gosh, okay.
Or do you have a favorite so far of them?
You can't go wrong with Skull Island as far as like characters and world building. Like it's the best. Like I'm still a Godzilla guy at heart, but like as far as like the actual best written movie, I'd say it's Skull Island. Then I'd probably go Godzilla Kong. Then I'd probably go King of the Monsters.
Okay.
Then this one, New Empire. Then the original Godzilla from 2014.
Yes, yeah. Where Godzilla's in it for like 10 minutes.
Of course, he costs money,
Right.
He can only be on set so long in the day. He's a diva like that.
I just love the advertising when like Bryan Cranston and Godzilla each in it for like 10 minutes, and they were like like both like what we're trying to draw people with. And it's like, you know, thought you were getting
Hey, it
both of
worked.
these. Yeah,
We got a franchise off of it. I'll
yeah.
take it.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. From humble
I
beginnings.
love Godzilla in most of his forms, outside of some of the really bad movies like Godzilla's Revenge.
Okay, yeah.
I can't say I hate Godzilla in any way, shape, or form.
Sure.
Like when the big G is there, I'm there with him.
Sure. And then, I mean, what we talked about on the -1 podcast is that he just has that longstanding legacy, and I like seeing different iterations of him. And he's always going to be an iconic movie character, and same with Kong. So, yeah, anytime you get to see them team up, especially with modern effects and stuff, even when it's like a bit bloated, it's still a fun time.
Yeah. It's just fun. I mean, from an audience perspective, you're probably going to gravitate more towards the primate than the cold, scaly lizard. But yeah, I mean, that's to be expected just based off of, how we're made up.
Yeah.
But Godzilla is a fun character, and you can play him as a huge force of nature monster that has no sympathy or empathy towards anyone.
Right.
Or you can have him be a goofy, fun character who loves the kids, not quite to the Gamera levels, but to the point where he actually protects humanity. Yeah.
And it's fun seeing those different versions. So hey, I do commend with this universe, like, yes, it's big and goofy and everything, but like they've also done a pretty good job, like, establishing connection there and like keeping it going. It's what it's set out to be. And, it's a fun series of interconnected B movies.
Look, like within the first 15, 20 minutes, after already establishing the hollow earth in the last movie, we find the hollower earth. Like at that time, it's like, the reason doesn't matter. Logic doesn't matter. We're telling a story here.
No.
You better get behind it. So yeah, that's it for Godzilla, X Kong, The New Empire.
Cool.
Next up, final on Kevin's list, we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Kevin, I am several movies behind. Tell me, what is going on here?
All right, so yeah, continuing on the thread of big giant monsters and gorillas here. Which ones have you seen? Just curious.
The first 3, and I think that's when I stopped. So I'm missing 3 or 4 in the new ones.
Okay, well, have you seen if you've seen the Caesar trilogy, then you've seen them all. You're caught up.
Have I? No, I swear there was the original, that was the remake, and then 2 after that. Weren't there 2 or 3 more?
There's been 3. So there was after the remake, there was Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and War of the Planet of the Apes. The last one came out in 2017. So they were all focused on Caesar, Andy Serkis character. So you said you may not have seen War, it sounds like, but if you've seen Rise and Dawn, you're only one behind.
That's good. Not as far behind as I thought.
Gotcha. So go back and watch the whole trilogy. I think it's still one of the best movie trilogies of all time. The original. I have not seen all of the original ones, dating back. I've seen the first, and then I haven't seen all the sequels from that era. I've not seen the Tim Burton remake, and I don't really need to.
Yeah, you're better off.
No, it's
the original films, I've seen them all too. They're good. They're solid.
Yeah,
there's goofy parts of them, but they're solid.
Oh, absolutely. What I'll say is Hollywood can learn a lot from this franchise because it's continuing to reinvent itself in new and interesting ways. So the Caesar trilogy, like I said, is I think one of the best in not just modern movie history, but I would easily put as one of the best trilogies of all time. It's a fantastic storytelling, similar to what I was talking about with Furiosa, spanning the whole story. It tells Caesar's life in full, the character that Andy Serkis brought to life. And whereas the original movies are set in the apes world, the Caesar trilogy is about how humanity eventually got wiped out and the apes took over. And Caesar is sort of this messianic figure that is leading them for a long time. And with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, so this takes place 300 years after the Caesar trilogy. The Caesar trilogy plays out probably over the course of about 15, 20 years, something like that, because it's Rise of the Planet of the Apes shows how the virus broke out initially. Dawn is set a little while after that, and then War finishes it up, and they're closer together. But this one is 300 years later. Caesar is a figure of the past, but like I said, he's kind of this messianic, Christ-like figure in the eyes of certain cultures of apes. now at this point, since humanity is mostly wiped out, as you can see from the poster, there is a core human character in the movie. But the virus spread a long time ago. There are not many humans left. But we focus on this guy, the main ape in this movie, and kind of the face of the franchise now going forward is a character named Noah, who is the one on the left there. And immediately, I liked the contradiction here. Whereas Caesar was this like towering figure and leader of his people, Noah is really a teenager trying to please his parents and kind of move up in within his tribe, but is very much like, not in any way like in a leadership role, not like this legacy character. It's just kind of like an like if you're a human, kind of like an everyman. And so we're introduced to him early on. His tribe is attacked by a rival ape tribe because, again, now that the apes are kind of forming their own world, there is, this movie starts to explore the different factions there, the different cultures that are evolving. And the one that attacks his tribe is part of this larger kingdom where this character played by Kevin Durant he names himself Proxima Caesar after taking his name obviously from Circus Caesar, but corrupts that identity completely and so that's really one of the things I liked about the movie the most is it has this message about stories and how they historical figures and how they get kind of corrupted over time, and this does that really well. And then I forget the character's name off the top of my head, but the ape on the right there of the poster, who looks very much the orangutan, who looks very much like Maurice in the Caesar trilogy. He is kind of one of the last followers of the original Caesar and is trying to preserve his message of apes uniting and hope and everything. So he becomes a partner to Noah, and then also you have this human who appears feral as a baby because again, if you see that in War for the Planet of the Apes, like how the virus spread and how humans became feral eventually. But she's trying to reclaim what's left of humanity and provide a future for them. And she actually meets another human who is like, "Why are you even wasting time on that? Like, it is the apes world. We're gone now." But she's still trying to hold on hope in that respect. And her and Noah become allies eventually. And so this, again, what I said earlier about Hollywood can learn a lot from this franchise. Aside from the Tim Burton remake, which is the only one that actually remade the original, all the others have been doing really new and interesting things each time. They're continually advancing the story. And I was listening to an interview with the director on that podcast I mentioned at the beginning here, where Wes Ball, and what he said was when he got approached for the stop and he's talking with the screenwriter, and they all agreed that they didn't want to make a part 4 to the Caesar trilogy because as much as people love those movies, they didn't want to just keep building on that. They wanted to provide something new that also paid tribute and was still set in that universe and still build on the continuity there. But they wanted to, he was thinking about people who were kids when Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out, and now they're into adulthood, and there's a newer generation that this might be their first Planet of the Apes movie, and he wanted to make does a really good job of making it accessible in that regard, and also making you want to go and watch all the other ones. And I just like that it's not this one is inching closer to the timeline of the original, but there's still a ways to go there, and it's still finding room to tell new stories and revitalize and not just do the same thing over and over again. So that, but for you, I would definitely go back, even if you saw the other two a long time ago, go watch the whole Caesar trilogy. It's fantastic. And then go see this one in theaters. But it is just, and the visuals, I just I think we're so used to really bad CGI that we forget what good looks like, and this is a perfect example of when CG and motion capture are done right. It's one of the most innovative pieces of modern filmmaking. And I would love, that's why I want to see more movies in this universe, because I just love spending time here. And especially because the Caesar trilogy, as much as I love it, it is, especially War, is very dark. And I mean, it's literally about how did humanity, disappear? This is a little more on the optimistic side because now this is about how the apes are finding their way, and you have a character like Noah who has that kind of innocence and curiosity and heartfelt nature that makes you root for him. Same with the human character and the orangutan here. It's just like you really want to spend time in this world and see where it goes and see how this new civilization forms. Even knowing that there will be also apes and civilizations here that will be just as corrupt as humanity was. But you also have ones like that are trying to do everything to provide a better future. So I really like that.
Yeah, one of the things you touched on there, how to franchise Hollywood needs to look at it. I agree completely because from what I do remember, and I do think now that we've had this conversation, I have seen 3. I invented some 4th mysterious film.
It's been a minute since it's been a minute since the last one came out, and you kind of yeah.
But I mean, the idea being this is a franchise where you can take it so many different places and focus on different aspects of the history in between what we know from the 68 film up to that point. You can fill it in with whatever. How does humanity lose their way? How do they become essentially mute? How does ape civilization triumph over them? Are they ever able to work together, or do we just get to the future where we see in the original movie that it just broke down to the point where humans are essentially seen as apes are today? And then even in the having a vague memory of the first film in this part of the reboot, where we see a spaceship going off, and that being the same spaceship where we have Taylor from the original movie coming in, so they can remake that movie somewhere down the line when they even finish filling in the gaps here. So yeah, there's a ton of possibilities here. You could easily just throw allegations at this franchise. Oh, it's just a money grab and stuff like that. But when you actually appreciate the films, when you actually explore what they have to say, there's a ton of good here. Yeah, this wasn't high on my list to go and see. I will see it eventually, but I'm glad to hear you give it such a favorable review. It sounds like a ton of fun.
And I did have reservations too, as far as I knew I was going to see it, but I wasn't sure if it would live up to the Caesar trilogy or if it would be, if, where they were going to go from here. And I was pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it. And I was actually, I was talking a little bit about box office earlier. I was kind of surprised that Fall Guy and Furiosa aren't doing great. And this is actually done surprising as well. I would not have predicted that. But I mean, I'm happy that it is. I hope the other two, the numbers go up because I want people to see all 3. But I was pleasantly surprised that this is done really well. And it sounds like we will be getting more down the road. And I would be grateful if this director returns. The thing he's known for besides this is the Maze Runner trilogy, which I don't really have familiarity with, but I thought he did a great job here. So definitely go see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I never saw the movies for Maze Runner. I read the first book, and it was fine. Didn't really have much of a desire to keep going, but I definitely understand why it has fans.
Yeah.
So, all right. That was it for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, unless there's something else you want to add.
No, just go check it out. It's a lot of fun.
So we'll get to our final pick. My final pick of the first Omen. Kevin, have you watched the original Omen?
I've seen the original. I've not seen this one yet. And I don't know much about the franchise as a whole. This one did look pretty good, and I'm really curious on your thoughts here.
Here we have another prequel. This one to the original Omen, the 78 version, maybe.
Right.
Don't come back to me with facts on that one. It takes place a couple of years before. Sorry for listeners who have watched me on YouTube so far. I've been struggling for some reason trying to get my throat to say, hey, you can talk again. So I'm doing what I can here. So it takes place a couple years before the original Omen. We have the Catholic Church doing their thing in Italy, in Rome, where a young novitiate, Margaret, comes in to join them around here to teach some of the orphans that they're taking care of. And she is brought to the point where before she actually takes her official oaths to join for good into the Catholic Church, into the nunnery, she has a wild night out with some of the other novitiates as their last hurrah of, freedom, as it were, in the world. And in the process, ends up kind of getting roofied wakes up the next day kind of wondering what happened. Did I just drink too much? What's going on here? Was that guy was I talking to? Did he do something to me? And it gets into this whole scenario of she ends up getting pregnant. And this is part of a much larger conspiracy through this whole thing, where she's wondering, how is this possible? I haven't done anything, or was it because of that night? What's going on? Is there anyone I can trust here from the people that I know? Because we do have some of the priests dying off, some of the nuns dying off in mysterious ways that look very supernatural in origin. And yeah, we talked about spoilers earlier. I'm going to be spoiling the heck out of this one because I have to in order to talk about something.
Sure.
She finds out that there is a conspiracy within the Catholic Church to create the Antichrist. If you're actually following Revelation, you would call him the beast, but the popular culture knows Antichrist. So I'm going to say Antichrist. So as part of that, she was put in a situation where she is going to give birth to the Antichrist. And she tries to get away, doesn't work, and is told that, the child, when it comes out, we're going to take him, we're going to give him to someone so the events of the original film can happen, so he can be raised in power to take over that power one day and, do his work to take over the world. Because their reasoning for all of this.
Wait, you're muted.
Sorry, I muted myself.
No worries.
And didn't get away from it. So the reasoning for doing all of this is because people are losing faith. And their genius idea for getting people to come back to faith in Christ is to engineer the events to where Jesus has to come back into the world, have the second coming and all that, because they make the Antichrist, the beast themselves. This is their master plan. This is their master scheme. And once again, I understand what I'm working with here. I'm working with Hollywood.
Yeah.
They haven't studied Catholicism that much. They haven't studied Christianity at all that much. So as I'm watching this go down, the gears are turning in my head and going, no, stop. And I go, that's their plan. So in order to get people to come back to Jesus, they're going to create his antithesis in this idea in the way that Hollywood understands the Antichrist and the beast, so that more people become Christian. And my mind broke after that point, and the rest of the film happens. She's able to give birth to twins, one of which is Damien, but there's also a girl. They don't care about the girl; they just care about the boy. So she's able to finally get away in the midst of that, kill some of the people who put her through this tragedy. Then she kind of lives on her own for a couple of years, and like in our Nick Fury recruiting the Avengers moment at the end of the film, she's. One of the people she knew shows back up in her life and tells her, "Hey, they've been trying to hunt you down, and we found out your son's name is Damien. We need to talk about you about the Omen Initiative or whatever." And that's our film.
Okay.
I have many things I could say about this film. It is it is okay. It's one of the few I have seen in theaters, so I had to put it on this list.
Sure.
I have some major gripes, shall we say, about some of the direction and the storytelling and all that. So that's where I'm at. Kevin, what do you think about all of that madness?
That is interesting. I rewatched Midnight Mass like a few weeks ago. I know you and I love Mike Flanagan, and I feel like he's one of the only. We've talked about before on the House of Usher episode. He's very secular and open, but he understands Christian themes, religious themes so much better than a lot of the filmmakers. I would love people like him should be writing these, or getting actual Christian screenwriters who know, how to ones that are good and know how to tell a story, that know the context and would do something different from this. But that just based on your description there, I got to check this out at some point, because these are it is fun, in some ways, whether it's ripping them apart or just seeing, okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have done that, but it's a choice,
This is a bonkers film in many ways. You need to watch it with friends so you can all heckle it.
Yes.
And impress. There's some really good scares in here too.
Okay.
Given it is a horror film, you should have those at some point in time. But yeah, as far as its actual plot, it got taken out behind the barn and shot. and it just came back, and what was left of that is what became this movie script.
I made it through the Pope's Exorcist last year, so that I mean, I can do this. But like that one, I don't know. Like Russell Crowe kept that movie together somewhat, but beyond that, I was laughing hysterically. But I do love a good bonkers horror movie like that,
Yes.
especially like you said that you watch with friends, and kind of like collectively talk about. That's a ton of fun to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things. There are many reasons why I'm not a Catholic, but one reason I'm really glad I'm not is that I didn't have to suffer through Hollywood's portrayal of the Catholic Church, because 99 times out of 100 they're gonna get it wrong, and you end up with films like this.
Which is funny too, because like there are a lot of filmmakers out there that are either ex-Catholics or some practicing. Like, I mean, there's people you can pull from for the knowledge there. It's just interesting. But
Yeah, it is what it is.
yeah,
All right, Kevin, do you have anything else to add before we head into the roundup?
I don't
wrap
think
up?
so. I mean, you sold me on all these. Like, these were I told you were interesting picks, and I want to check these out. Hopefully, I sold mine well enough. But
Oh yes,
yeah, I think it's been an interesting year so far. Like I said, it was a slow start, but now that more stuff is coming out, I know it's still a struggle getting people back to theaters. Aside, we had the Barbenheimer phenomenon last year, but that was like a moment there where it was so exciting to see people coming back to theaters. Because, like I said, I go all the time. But now we're kind of in that back to the period of like struggling to get people. I think Deadpool will be the next big thing. And then it'll
yes,
be interesting, where we go from there. But I would leave it on that note of just like, I just encourage people to be like, there's nothing like the theatrical experience. Like, just go check it, even if it's just one of these. And I know money is tight, so I realize you can't do it all the time. But if there's one you really want to support, try to make it out to the big screen. It's a different experience from streaming. And I just encourage people to not wait for everything to come to streaming. Try to get to theaters
yes,
when you can.
yeah, I'll agree with that. So, did it spark something I was going to bring up? Do you have any films that for the rest of 2024 that like
Yeah.
on your list? Gotta go watch them.
So definitely Deadpool, of course. I mean, that's obvious, but and it was crazy too. I bought my tickets the other day, and I mean, it doesn't come out till the end of July, and they went on sale last Monday. They were already selling out like as soon as I got on. So it's back to that. Like, it hasn't been like that in the MCU since Endgame, where it was like hard to get tickets. So get your tickets for Deadpool if you haven't already. The other one I just got tickets for comes out in a few weeks. I've been anticipating for a while. The Bike Riders with Austin Butler. It looks like, I mean, when I first saw the trailer, I thought it was a Sons of Anarchy prequel, and which I would have been down for. I mean, it feels very much like that, but it's a biker gang, like outlaw. Looks like a fun biker western esque. And then the other one is Quiet Place, Day One.
Oh yeah,
That's coming out very soon, and I cannot wait.
yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, Deadpool, Wolverine. That's definitely on my list of.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
the MCU has kind of been disappointing me in the
Mhm.
past. Let's see, can they win me back with Deadpool doing what he does and having Hugh Jackman again showing up in costume this time, finally as Wolverine, dealing with multiverse shenanigans? Like, please sign me up. Then there's Inside Out 2 is coming out this year. I'm a little
Yeah.
hesitant because I'm like, oh no, sequel to the original Pixar production. That could go either way. But man, the original Inside Out just like wrecked me, man. I
It
cried watching that film.
Oh gosh, it's heartbreaking. Like, I mean, I had the same kind of reservations. Like, I'm definitely gonna see it, and that'll be a fun one to take. Like, I mean, definitely my niece too, and my nephew possibly we might do his first theater experience for.
Oh,
I
nice.
think he might sit through because they both liked the original. And like, but I like from the trailer that this is her going to high school, and now she gets these new emotions there. Another thing that sold me on is Maya Hawke is in the sequel, and she's like celebrity crush for me, and like one of my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
like musicians and actors. So I'm already there for that. But it does, yeah. I mean, I also Pixar sequels can be hit or miss, but I'm hoping this one will be really good because the first one is just like it's so well done, and it is an emotional tearjerker.
Oh yeah. And other than that, Alien Romulus.
Oh
Uh,
yes, yes, yeah.
I'm interested in one after the events of Alien. It looks like Aliens. is gonna. Oh, actually, no. It looks like it's set between Alien and Aliens. So
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. I
I'm
saw
looking
that
forward
trailer
to
the
that.
other day. Looks great. Yeah.
And then the Crow remake. I'll be hesitantly expecting something out of that.
That's a fair assumption. I mean, the trailer was something. I love Bill Skarsgård. That's probably the main draw. But that'll be, yeah, we'll see what happens there.
Okay, so with all that in mind, do you have any recommendations for the audience?
Back to my What's Geeking Out, I would go check out the Director's Cut podcast if you're really into this kind of stuff. Like, I love, deep dive, stuff like that. So check that out. And then, yeah, I would say, in additional recommendations here, go watch like the whole Caesar trilogy, Planet of the Apes, if you haven't before. It's just spot on. Like like I said, you can get all the Planet of the Apes movies on Hulu right now. So it's a perfect marathon for you, and you can get all the Mad Max movies on Max. So so you got marathons awaiting you.
Solid choices, great film franchises. I'm going to go, since I saw Nausicaa in theaters not too long ago for the 40th anniversary of Ghibli. I just got on a Ghibli kick, and I watched Castle in the Sky with a friend here, and man, it just blew me away again. Like, you cannot go wrong watching Nausicaa or Castle in the Sky, and there's so many more from Ghibli. Just like, if you want to just enjoy good animation and a great story, like good female protagonists who aren't just like, I'm just one of the boys, or I'm better than you because the script says so. Like, they have flaws, they have interesting facets of the characterization. Like, go watch a Ghibli movie, you're probably going to get those.
Did you see The Boy and the Heron, the most recent?
That is on my list. I need to see that one.
It's excellent. Yeah, that one. I'll just say, I think that's, if not one of his most ambitious films yet in terms of themes and narrative. It was really breathtaking.
Something to look forward to. All right, guys. Yeah, what were your favorite films of this year? Please leave them in the comments below. Let us know, hey, why didn't you focus on this? Well, probably because I didn't see it. Kevin will be the one to actually ask that question too. Or what do you think about this on the films we talked about? Why didn't you focus on them? Well, how are we going to know if you don't put it down there for us to see? So if you're on the podcast as well, just leave a 5-star review in your podcasting platform of choice. If you're on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe. Otherwise, you're going to break poor Will's heart. And we can't have that. His heart gets broken enough as it is. We need to put him back together piece by piece. And you could be a part of that process, that healing process. And as well, guys, we have over 100 subscribers on our Systematic Geekology YouTube page. And one of the goals we had for that is we're going to do a Q&A with our hosts, as many as possible, to bring together to answer your questions. So if you want to throw questions our way, you can do that on our Facebook group, the Priest of the Geeks page. You can do it on Discord. We have a special episode discussions page there for you to do that on. Or you can do it on YouTube as well. Just leaving comments down below. This is what I'd like you to cover. Or this is what I have a specific question for. Hey, what movie that you haven't covered would you like to do, or what have you, something in that regard. And as well, you can leave those questions at systematicgeekology@gmail.com, or just in general to contact us. I'd like to shout out some patrons real quick. Thank you, Russell Gentry, Justin Vaughn, Annette Knoll, and Jeannie Mattingly. Guys, thank you for everything that you do. But remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
If you'd like to support our show, please consider joining our Patreon, where you get live access to our YouTube exclusives, including our comic book catch-up, Manga Mustard, Drinks with Tejas, and our companion series that we do each year with our annual theme. You can also get exclusive merch, including t-shirts, handbags, a coffee mug, and a long sleeve shirt. We also have available bonus extra questions at the end of most of our podcast episodes. You get access to exclusive Discord channels, discounts on our store, access to any future online D&D campaigns. You get to vote on topics for some of our episodes. You can easily access all of the Patreon content right through Spotify now. So super easy. Go to our Spotify page at the top. It's going to say exclusive content for subscribers. If you're a patron, hit that button. You get all of our bonus content right there on Spotify, right with your regular feed. And of course, you get the satisfaction of knowing you helped a podcast in need. Our overhead includes editing software, marketing equipment, recording software, and a lot more. And there's a lot that goes into keeping the lights on here. And we really appreciate all of our patron subscribers for helping this show happen.
If you love our show, you can follow the whole network in a single feed on Spotify at Anazara Ministry Podcast, or the network page on Apple Podcasts. There you'll find shows like The Homely, The Whole Church Podcast, My Seminary Life, Let Nothing Move You, Dummy for Theology, The Bible After Hours, as well as mine and my husband's show, The Clydes, where my husband Taylor and I go through weekly discussions in a devotional conversational method to help us all get closer to one another and God.